there are a substantial number of dogs in my neighborhood just making a ton of noise. So that's an interesting way to start today's stream. Hey everyone, welcome back to the stream. It has... What was I going? I was going to say something. I'm going to wait a little bit of time until people come into the stream. I started this one a little later, past the hour, but at 4 o'clock. So hopefully some people from Europe can potentially watch, since I know usually I stream really late for European time zones. So hopefully that helps. I have quite a bit to talk about today. Some news, some stuff I've been thinking about transit-wise, and the like. So it's exciting. I have new posters on my wall, which I'm excited about. The other ones have been moved to a different wall. I have a giant transit map I've put up. So it's really exciting. Tomorrow is TransitCon. I'm going to be speaking, so look that up on the internet if you dare, or on Twitter, and then you can come watch me speak. It's a free event, so that should be fun. What else is there besides that? Let me think. Yes, so I released my New York City Explained video today. Not really the city, the subway system explained, which I think will be quite good if you haven't seen it yet. I put a lot of work into it, so I hope everyone takes some time to watch it today. It was a ton of work, so I hope it does really well. This year, the plan is one explained video a month. People always are commenting saying, are you going to do this city, or are you going to do this city? I will probably do, if it's a major city, I will probably do it eventually. It just takes a lot of time to make these videos, and naturally, as someone who is trying to grow their YouTube channel, I'm going to make videos about the biggest cities first, and then work my way along. So, smaller cities I might do, but I'm going to try to start with the largest cities because it attracts more viewers, which is important to me, because making this sustainable in the long run means having more viewers today rather than doing videos on cities like New York in the future. Also, I think that big cities are where you can learn the most, because there's just the most infrastructure, the most stuff to learn from. And so, yeah, definitely go check out that video if you haven't, because it was a lot of work. Other things to mention, if you're not already, follow me on social media, because I post a ton of stuff. I post on, for example, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. TikTok is an interesting one. Mainly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I exist on the platforms, as one does, but I don't use them as much. Twitter I use a lot because it's a really good place to share news, opinions, all of that sort of stuff. And so it's a good place also to get some behind the scenes, but also to help contribute to videos and the like. Sometimes I post about stuff I'm working on, so that's always fun. What else do I have to say? I think that's about it for now. I have a kind of long list of topics, so there's a lot to discuss, and then some news, a lot of things. I'll give it a few more minutes before I get into anything serious, and so I'll just look at the chat for a short period of time here. Also, going to have another interesting guest on the stream. So I have the next stream is booked for 2 weeks from now. I do streams, regular streams every 2 weeks, so do set a reminder for that. It'll be, I think, at the more regular time. But also, in 1 week from now, I'm doing another stream with a transit expert, if you can call them that. I know the word expert, it's difficult to define what is an expert and what isn't, but someone who's very knowledgeable about transit in a different kind of subsection of the space, and so I think that'll be really interesting. So hopefully people come and watch some of that, because I think it'll be really fun. The one I did a week ago with Tyson Moore about signaling, I think was really well received and super interesting, so you should definitely go check that if you haven't. And I also did one with Jonathan English, largely about New York City, but also just about stuff all around the world a couple weeks before that. So I think these are really fun. So yes, a lot of people saying hello and hey. Well, hello everyone. Posters behind me have changed. Yes, they have. Someone saying, where did you get the Montreal map? All of these are from the official stores from the different transit agencies. So that one is from the STM store, which is a little annoying. It's out of date. The EXO map, well, first of all, it's an AMT map, as you can see the logo right here. It doesn't have the Mascouche line, or it does, but it's shown as a future line, so that's a little annoying. They really got to update that. I've had this poster before, and they still haven't updated it. Next to that, we have the TTC one with the streetcars and subway network, which is cool. And up here, we have the Translink one, literally from a compass vending machine, which is really cool. They sell all of their old signs, Translink, so they're cool ones to get. So yes, why is Line 3 having so much trouble with snow? Line 3 in Toronto uses the same technology as the SkyTrain. I mean, I think it's a matter of unfortunate acceptance at this point. With the line getting ripped out, I think that over the years, it feels like we're trying less and less to keep things running as much as possible. So that's kind of my personal perception. It is also difficult because the line is in kind of rough shape because I don't think it's been maintained that fantastically over the years. And there is a real point that when there is actually a ton of snow, it is a bit hard to move it off the tracks since they're kind of almost in a bit of a cutting. Well, not a cutting, but they have these concrete walls next to them, and it just it gets difficult, and so that's part of the problem. Hey from San Francisco, London, Burnaby, Montreal, Jason from New York here. Let's keep going down here. Bern is not on the immediate list. Zurich is on the immediate list, but Bern will happen eventually for sure. Have you thought about streaming on Twitch? Not really, to be honest. For me, YouTube is my main platform, and I think streaming on Twitch would be a lot of extra work for not necessarily a lot of extra benefit. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that now. Also, streaming is just not really something I'm super great at or experienced in. Again, I'm spending most of my extra time investing in better video quality, which I hope is coming through in things like the New York video. And ever since the Singapore explained video, I've been putting a lot more work into these explained videos, and I hope it's showing, but it takes a ton of time. So in the future, at some point when I'm comfortable with where we are with regular videos, then I will probably put a bit more effort into learning more about streaming and ramping things up over here. What about a streetcar trolleybus episode? I'm not sure if you mean for the stream. Apparently I'm live. Yes, I am live, Alfie. Love the new Metro map. I love it too. The Montreal Metro map is awesome. I'm a huge fan of it. It is interesting how both Toronto and Montreal have colored on black maps, which is kind of interesting. Jordan Eisenberg, thank you for the super chat. Super appreciated. And yes, I did hear. So EXO, the Montreal area transit agency that was renamed from AMT, has ordered a bunch of chargers. So that's cool for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's the first commuter rail charger order in Canada, which is cool. They're operating in the US in a bunch of places, but yeah, that should be interesting. I think they're probably like the first new equipment to be ordered since it's been called EXO, so I think that's cool. Though again, I don't know, I haven't read the specifics, but I imagine this order is going to take a while to arrive because there's a lot of chargers ordered, so from various agencies, so that's a bit of a struggle, but it's good. The chargers are modern, low-emission locomotives, and so it's really exciting to see that they have them, or that they're getting them. Yeah, and they're ordering, I think, like 10, so yeah. Do you think the traditional Harry Beck map is applicable everywhere, particularly relevant in New York? I think it could be. I think well executed, it could look a lot like the Vignelli map. So yeah, people have comments about the kind of geographic nature, but the reality is that there's always space for multiple map designs. I mean, Vancouver, which is on this wall, Montreal and Toronto, Montreal and Toronto, all have like they're more diagrammatic maps that are really only supposed to show the rail system, and then they have totally separate maps for the geography of the region. I think New York could be the exact same for that. I don't see a reason for it not to be. Any new thoughts about Ottawa's system, its future, its progress, etc.? Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see the system is expanding. It's continuing to expand, and I think that's really exciting to watch. Reliability seems to have improved if, like, there's problems, but reliability seems to be improving over time. And of course, Line 2, which is my favorite line on the O train, there are only two, so it's one or the other, but Line 2 is still a really cool line, great infrastructure, and they're testing their new trains from Statler, which I think is super exciting. So yeah, I'm excited overall. Okay, something. Oh. So Vovacat, thank you for the super chat. Do you find passenger aircraft stuff fascinating? Because it's one of those things that's clearly public infrastructure, but not transit. And not really necessarily public, right? Airlines are widely not public, and airports are often run by private entities. It's really interesting how they work in Canada. We have a lot of really nice airports in Canada that are very expensive to fly out of, but make of that what you will. I like aviation for sure. I play Flight Simulator, and hey, maybe I'll game stream at some point in the future. But as a Canadian, it becomes a little hard to be, a huge av geek, or at least to grow up as a huge av geek, because it's just so expensive to fly here. I mean, I've flown a lot in my life, but I know a lot of people who have not, and it's not surprising because flying from here to the other side of the country is like $700, $800. At least in my experience flying at any kind of busy time. So yeah, I do like that stuff, but yeah, that's my thoughts. I do talk about airports from time to time on the channel, and I have a few more videos planned this year on talking about airports connected to public transit, because I think that airports are important, obviously, and I think that connecting them with transit is really great because, as I've said in previous videos, and I think people get this interpretation that I think that, airports are just tourists, and why would you serve them with public transit? Like, you're not serving your residents. But the reality is, first of all, lots of people work at airports. Second of all, airports should hypothetically be fairly easy to connect with rail, especially, because they tend to be on a lot of open land. You can connect them really fast. It's really ideal. And last, it's such an easy market to capture for transit, which I think is really important. When people travel to a city that doesn't have like an air rail link, maybe they're going to take a bus, but a lot of people will rent a car. And I think if you provide a really compelling air rail link, a lot of stuff people are going to a city for, they're doing in the downtown. And so if you have that option, then you can just remove a lot of cars from the road. And I think that's a really good option. Thank you for the Karlsruhe video. Thanks so much. I have not played GTA 4. With Ontario's provincial election coming in June, do you believe there will be talk about transit, or will it get sidelined by COVID? That's a good question, actually. So Ontario is spending more on transit than almost any, maybe besides like New York. And New York is spending a lot, but not building a lot. I think Ontario is probably building more transit than any other province or state in Canada or the United States. California is also doing a lot, but color me not as impressed because there's only a few subway projects. So yeah, no, I think it'll definitely be on the conversation because it's such a huge thing that we're spending money on and a lot of resources, and I think it's so important that it is a discussion. Please make crayoning videos of other cities like San Francisco, New York, LA, Seattle, Philly, Boston, etc. I'm thinking, yeah, I might do videos like that in the future. The problem is bigger cities become more and more difficult to do videos on. I might just talk about like some projects I'd like to see in various cities, but people take this stuff really seriously. I mean, I made this video about Buffalo, and people were saying how, Buffalo's not growing, and this isn't practical and stuff. And for one, yeah, sure. For two, okay, I still think it's an interesting thought experiment to look at a city and say how could we make the transit better if we were growing, or if we were maybe interested in economic development, and transit is one of the ways you can help spur that on. So yes, and also the last thing is that the United States and Canada spend a lot of money on transit. We just don't always get a lot for our money, and I think that recognizing that's important, because a lot of the time people say things like, oh, like we would never convince politicians to spend the money, but politicians spend tons of money, sometimes not on transit, but in many times on transit, just on transit that is really expensive to build. And so I don't think money is as much of a challenge as people often think it is, at least in North America. EXO, the Montreal commuter rail agency, is also getting CRRC rolling stock, which is a little iffy. CRRC doesn't have the greatest reputation in North America for building reliable rolling stock. But yeah, they only ordered like 20 cars or something like that. But it is interesting that they're building mainline rolling stock for a major city. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. I actually have water today so that I can talk for a reasonable amount of time. And ow, my shoulder is really sore. Something that I wanted to mention, news item here, that's really cool. Someone shared on Twitter, and again, this is why you should follow me on Twitter, is Union Pacific. Yes, Union Pacific announced that they're going to be testing electric locomotives for freight in North America, which is really exciting. Battery electric, yes, and so you might kind of go, oh, it's just battery electric. But people were pointing out there is a pantograph on the trains. Now, to be honest, the reason for that is probably because they're planning on just charging via pantograph, which wouldn't be unreasonable at all. But at the same time, I think it is possible that we realize pretty quickly after having pantographs and we put up wire to charge the trains, maybe it's just a good idea to run a little bit more wire and more and more and more, and then eventually we'll end up electrifying a lot of stuff, hopefully. And so I thought that was an exciting piece of news to see, because North American freight, I think this is the beginnings of North American freight being electrified, and I think that is super exciting, to be honest. Oh, well, thank you, Vovacat, again, for this super chat. Referring to the airport rail link in Moscow. Yes, I actually am a big fan of the Airport Express in Moscow. If you follow the channel for a while, you'll know that I think I've mentioned it before, but they use Statler KISS trains, the same model used on Caltrain, which is really exciting. And they're really good-looking trains. Those same trains, and this is kind of an interesting thing that hasn't been reported very widely, but I've talked about the Moscow Central Circle in my Moscow Central Diameters video, and which is that repurposed freight line that goes around Moscow that's used kind of like just a loop railway. It's been, again, incredibly successful, and they're actually testing double-decker Statler KISS trains on it from the Aero Express to see if it's something they want to start using because they need the capacity. So I thought that was super exciting. And Jordan sends a super chat. Can't we just connect Buffalo to go? I mean, it's tempting, but cross-border, I just feel like in North America it's going to be difficult. And I don't think the barrier is necessarily Canada. I think the U.S. is probably less a fan of having a more, let's say, permeable border than Canada is of it, less of a fan of it. And so I don't think the restricting factor is necessarily Canada. But, while I don't necessarily think Go Transit makes sense, I do think like an enhanced intercity service could be a really cool option for sure. But there needs to be better like pre-clearance or something like that, because the time to clear people on those trains to cross the border is way too long. Train tilting in HSR isn't necessary. You said it was just for passenger comfort, and I can't find anything about it. Yeah, so it generally, it can help In some cases, it's been used, going around corners and stuff to aid with speed, but it doesn't substantially help in terms of the actual physics of the train because you're still putting pressure on the outside of the rails, basically. So it is mainly a passenger comfort thing because you feel less kind of, I think it's like less lateral G-force, because if you're sitting flat and you go around a corner fast, it's like sideways pressure. But if you bank, right, it's downwards too, which helps reduce the G-forces for comfort. A proposal to build a monorail in DC. Someone's been spending too much time watching LA transit news. Hey, I've watched and enjoyed many of your videos. I'm moving to Sydney in a few months, and I want to know your thoughts about getting around the city without a car. Yeah, no, it's a great topic. I think what you should look at is try to live within. The nice thing about Sydney is it's fairly practical to. It's fairly practical to get around on a bike during all times of the year. People talk about winter cycling, but at least this past week in Toronto, and frankly, almost all the time in Toronto because of how hostile drivers are to cyclists, I wouldn't really want to cycle. But in Sydney, cycling could be a pretty compelling option. So try to live within cycling or walking distance of a rail station, and I think that would be a big boost. But I also think that even more important maybe than being close to a rail station specifically, though obviously you want to be close to a rail station, is being close to like daily essentials. So groceries, medical, like your doctor, your dentist, things like that. Anything you're going to on a regular basis, because commuter transport is actually something we tend to have a lot of, like in any major Western city in the world. We lack the daily trip stuff. And so if you can walk for your daily trips, I think that's incredibly useful. So that would be what I would say. Should the US invest in beautifying its rolling stock? I mean, I don't think it has to be an investment, right? Just decide when you order it to have some more color. Yep, I definitely agree that taking a metro straight from the airport does feel very nice. What do you think is the best tram system in Europe? Stay tuned for Monday's video. There was a guy who had to live in an airport for 18 years. If you had to live in one train station for 1 year and couldn't leave, which station would you pick? Probably like Shinjuku in Tokyo because it's so gigantic. Coming back to Montreal sometime, do you ever do lectures or have speaking engagements at universities? I guess I have kind of done a lecture back in my days of TAing at U of T, but I don't regularly do any speaking engagements or lectures. I just haven't been invited to. If I was invited to, I probably would, because I think that would be pretty fun. Will I be coming back to Montreal sometime? Yeah. I probably hope to be in Montreal a couple times a year, every year. And ideally, I might, move there in the future, as I mentioned in my last stream. Will Ontario Northland be a hot button issue? I somewhat doubt it. So you're planning on visiting other countries to get more in-depth experience on different transit systems when the world is normal again, whenever that may be? Yeah, no, I'm definitely planning on that. But at the same time, I think people may not recognize that I've traveled a lot actually in my life. I was really lucky as a kid to travel a lot, and so I don't have this crazy desire to travel. I do want to travel, but mainly to places that like Tokyo or Seoul, where I feel like there's so much time I want to spend just getting more familiar with the systems on the ground. But I've been to a lot of places, and so I have a lot of the in-depth experience, and it's mainly about I want to get really comfortable with a few of the major cities, Paris to London. So yeah, lots of big cities. You should talk more about Denver. It's the only transit within 50 miles of where I live. I have actually talked about Denver quite a lot on the channel, though, and I try to say this fairly often, and this isn't just a ploy to get people to watch more videos, but I talk about cities kind of all over the place. Like, you might watch a video about one city and I will mention a bunch of other cities, and that's the reality of how I think we should approach public transit and a lot of other topics. When you're looking at it, you should not draw your boundaries of good examples to bring up as just being within the country. So if I'm talking about, I don't know, air rail links, like, yeah, I'll bring up Denver's because I think Denver's is actually quite good. And so, yeah, Denver comes up a fair amount. I think it's one of the better transit systems in the U.S., certainly in the western United States. It just has such lackluster service, right? That's the main problem Denver faces, because it has spending a lot on expanding. Just thinking a bit more. Also, that said, and this is something I should probably just say more often, I only make 4 videos a week, which is a lot of videos, but I just can't cover that many places. People often are requesting different places, and I do try to cover, commonly requested cities. Like Budapest was, asked for so many times. But it's not like I don't really take requests, and I cover stuff based on what I think is interesting, and reality is I can't cover everything. Can't transit induce growth? Transit definitely can induce growth. Do you think more people will take Via Rail if they are offered more frequency or if they served more places? Absolutely. And okay, I've been shot to the bottom. Vovacat sent another super chat. Thank you. I can't see a single argument for non-electric trains. Railways are made to be electrified, and non-electric passenger high-speed rail. Seriously? There are lots of arguments, right? Infrastructure is expensive, and it is also more complicated. So there's definitely arguments to be made for non-electric trains. Some of them aren't good, but some of them are very reasonable, and I think that we are often too quick to jump on to a certain bandwagon and just say that everything should be electrified and, this is what the ideal world looks like. And yes, electrification is great, but if you're running very low density of trains, or if you have to do heavy maintenance, or if there are legitimate clearance issues, then electrification can actually be challenging. So all things worth considering. I'm trying to find where I am in the chat again. Yes, taking a video about crayons seriously is a little frustrating. So, one thing I was going to say is it's difficult, doing YouTube oftentimes, and comments can be incredibly frustrating sometimes. And people generally are well-wishing, but a few major things stick out to me. First of all, it's when people send it's like super long comments, it's challenging because you shouldn't send a long comment. If you have a really long thing to say, maybe just send an email or something, because YouTube comments are a bit finicky. Your comment may disappear. I may not be able to consistently reply. There aren't like notifications, at least on my end, or if there are, they get blown away by 100 other comments about when people reply back to comments. So there's not a good way of it's good for if you want to say good job or you should know about this, but it's not great for 20-point critique of a video. And also, I think sometimes it's not super helpful, right? You have to consider when making a video. It's often, if I don't mention something, it's often a conscious decision, because if videos are too long, people don't watch them. And so it's always a fine balance between making a video that is long and comprehensive, like the Tokyo and New York ones are on the long side, and making something short that's a lot easier for people to watch. So these are things worth considering just in general with people on YouTube, especially when it's a lot of work to make stuff. So, be gentle with people, because, yeah, it takes a lot of effort and work, and people often are already self-conscious and stuff, and so you should just not punish them for putting themselves out there. So this is my advice for the day. And I also have some other things that are interesting discussion points that are very meta. So maybe I'll touch on some of those a bit later. I'm also always happy to answer meta questions about the channel. What's the best metro system in Canada? Montreal? Yeah, I would say so. Though I would like to have air conditioning. Are you planning on making a video about Hamburg's new U5 line? Probably not now, but in the future, yes. How do you think Metro North compares to other U.S. regional rail systems? The U.S. doesn't have many regional rail systems, right? It has maybe 4 or 5. So I just don't think that's a useful comparison. I think if you really want to see how Metro North is, compare it to like stuff in Europe and Asia, and then it'll be a lot worse, but it will be a lot more instructive on how to make it better. And there's some good things like the electrification on a lot of Metro North, but then there are some bad things like station design, rolling stock, etc., infrastructure utilization. How small is too small for a city to shift away from using bus transit? I mean, I think when you're at 100,000 people, there are actually a shocking amount of cities of around that size that have rail transit. So I don't know if I'd say it's good or bad, but I think that's when you can think about it. But I think it's more important to think about when you actually need to. When are buses just not enough? Are American freight companies banking on battery trains, or do they not believe that they will get more regulated to make them more green? I mean, batteries, frankly, are not as bad as I think a lot of people think. Batteries have their issues, but they have a lot of positives as well. I'm fairly positive on batteries. It's day in Canada. Indeed, it is sunset time in Toronto here. Will you ever visit Amsterdam? I visited Amsterdam many times in the past, but will I visit it again? Definitely. But that's what I'm talking about. Like I visited Amsterdam. Hi Reece, do you have any real-world example of cross-platform interchange between two tram lines, only on surface, no fancy underpass? Well, sure. Like many cities that have tram lines with island platforms, you can have cross-platform pretty easily. If the routes are splitting after that location, you can have a tram come in from one side and then you can depart on the other side in a cross-platform manner. Please visit Athens. It has through running of Line 3 at the airport. I visited Athens. It's a really cool city. The metro is very nice, and so are the trams. I like when Reece, but I had an experience, I think I talked about in a previous stream, on a ferry traveling from Athens to like Mykonos, which was not great. I like when Reece talks about trams because I live in Lisbon and our trams have all the defects Reece points out in other tram systems. Oh, that's unfortunate. Have you heard about the Northern Lights Express? It's one of the best North American HSR projects in the works right now, and it's been largely underreported. Well, is it in the works? I feel like that might be a bit of a generous description. And it's not to say that it's not a good project. I have heard of it. I forget. Is it in like Minnesota or something like that, or it's in like the Midwest somewhere? I believe. That's what's ringing a bell to me. I struggle to call it one of the best though, because I don't think there's any construction, which I think is kind of necessary to call it a true project. I would call it kind of like a proposal if it's not under construction. How does Presto work with fare zones? You would have tap on and tap off. A tad late, but greetings from Cologne, Germany. Hello. NLE isn't... Now, I don't know what NLE is. It's brain problems today, I guess. Thanks for the answer. Roller coaster, just tilt the entire tracks to avoid lateral G-forces. Why don't we do that to get smaller bends on high-speed rail? Because what if your train has to slow down? Also, your train is not physically attached to the tracks, which is the case in most roller coasters that are doing heavy banking. Also, because that would probably be quite nauseating. So, problem. Okay, Northern Lights Express, I see. What do you think of North Toronto Station being a potential future GO station? I talked about it in a video before, so I'm going to leave it to that video to explain. Thoughts on the need for bike racks on buses? Common in North America, unseen in the Netherlands and most European cities. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just a good thing. You just shouldn't have this expectation that everyone can carry their bike by a bike rack, but having it as a last resort option is something that's positive, I think. What do you think about Marta's new rolling stock? I talked about this on Twitter, which is part of why following me there is valuable, but I think it looks great. It looks very Stadler, and I think it will be some of the nicest in North America, which is very good for Marta. What are your opinions on Amtrak's new Acela trains? They look really nice, but it would be great if they could go anywhere close to their top speed, and also the fact that the profile of the power car and the passenger cars are different, I believe because of the tilting, is very frustrating. Alfie has a comment that I agree with, but which I am not going to repeat. What is the one metro system that you would like to visit in the future, and why? I haven't been to Chengdu. I talked about it on Twitter as well, and suffice to say, it's very interesting. Chengdu in China, southwestern China, had 0 metro lines and 0 metro stations before 2010. It now has 370, so it's very impressive. I really like Aventras. I like the Aventra trains from Bombardier as well. Jacob, the YouTube member, is here. Hello, Jacob. If you're not already, consider supporting the channel on Patreon or YouTube memberships because it helps me make more videos and it allows me to spend more time on long videos like New York and make them better. So, yeah. Is a video about the Rotterdam Metro in the pipeline? Not currently, but it's probably doable this year. What country does your greatest demographic come from? It depends on the month. It's been the UK, it's been Canada, it's been Australia, it's been US. So it's jumped around a lot. There was a substantial amount of people from a bunch of European countries, India as well at points in the past, Singapore as well in the past, Northern Europe, Latin America in the past. It's really quite a diverse audience. It's pretty exciting. What do you think of Hamburg, Germany, public transport-wise? I love the elevated rail system. It's very nice. I love the red doors on the trains. I think they look really good. And the fact that it's elevated near a lot of historical structures, I think it sets a really interesting precedent for cities like Montreal. So yeah. Is there any progress with the Ontario line? Did they choose a rolling stock? That is all still being decided. It's not really, it's being bid on right now. Will you ever do a Let's Play of Mini Metro and Mini Motorway? Probably not. I suck at Mini Metro, and I would never play Mini Motorway. What's your favorite London Underground line and why? I've said before about the Piccadilly line, just because the diversity of the various locales connecting to Heathrow is cool. I think the station at T5 is really nice. Actually, though, the Victoria line is also very impressive with all of its cross-platform interchanges and wacky stuff they did. So it's probably a toss-up between those ones. Also, the JLE is really cool, but the platform screen doors have their problems, so it's like a runner-up. Should trains be electrified with AC or DC? See my video on how to power your trains for the answer to that question. Getting rid of trams is so incredibly infuriating. I'm glad they're popping up everywhere again. Yeah, I think removing transit is generally a pretty frustrating thing. What is your opinion on the SF Central Subway? I think it would be great if San Francisco expanded like BART. I don't know why. I just don't think that putting light rail in a tunnel, especially when you're paying as much money for tunnels as US and Canada do, is a really sensible approach. You know, places like Singapore and Hong Kong also pay a lot for tunnels, but they fill them with really high capacity metros. We often do not do that, and I think it is not a very sensible thing. Have you seen Translink's Transport 2050 plan? Thoughts? Indeed, I have, and I participated in the surveys and stuff for it. I actually don't have a ton of thoughts on the Translink plan, but what I do have thoughts on is the fact that the Burnaby Mountain Gondola, which I've talked about, I believe, in previous videos, definitely in my Urban Gondola video, it was approved by the City Council in Burnaby, which is the city where it's located, and so Canada might get its first public transit gondola, and it's a 3S gondola, which is a big gondola, and it is a gondola. It's not a cable car where, you know, or tram, aerial tramway, where it moves back and forth. It's a circulating loop of giant cabins, so it is really cool. And 3S means 3 cables. It's more infrastructure, bigger towers. I like it. It's cool. So yeah. Okay, another comment I wanted to make generally about requests, because people, again, a lot of people are requesting videos all the time, and so I want to give people updates on why the videos take a long time. This is the second point. More recently, as you've probably been noticing with videos such as the Karlsruhe video, the Marmaray video, the explained video that is coming later in February, you'll notice that there is footage taken internationally, really good footage generally, taken internationally by various people. This is something I've been trying to do because I want to... Sorry, I was just looking at something. Because I want to try to, improve the production quality. Doing that is really fun, but it also takes a lot of work because you end up messaging and emailing a ton of people back and forth to try to make sure you can get footage set up and the like. And I'm, of course, super happy for people who do it, but it just takes a ton of time because you often talk to several people and then you have to get footage back and forth, and it's a long process. And so suffice to say, that is another reason that these videos take longer. So yeah. And also just, I've been kind of Toronto's been locked down now for a lot of the last year and a half, and I'm going slightly crazy here in the apartment. There's a lot of snow outside, so I'm not going out as much. I used to be doing a lot more walks. And so it's just so stressful and tiring. And someone commented in a video I saw, I don't know, like a week ago, they're like, it looks like you just got out of bed. And to be fair, I did comb my hair, but at the same time, I also did get up out of bed at like 5 o'clock before I filmed the video because like my sleep schedule is horrible. If you follow me on Twitter, you might have noticed I often tweet at like 3:30 in the morning or like 5 in the morning. It's not 5 in the morning because I'm waking up early. I'm sleeping at random times. It's kind of horrible. And so please be sympathetic for a while, because as long as COVID is a thing, it's hard to make stuff. Best airport train station. I think Heathrow might have the position of most airport train stations, but Charles de Gaulle in Paris would probably be one of the contenders for that, I would have to say. Schiphol in Amsterdam is another good example. So, yeah. What do you think of the European night train network? Going to the rest of the continent is a non-starter from Lisbon. I think it's good. Yeah, I think, as I've said before, this applies to everything in transit and in a lot of different spaces. More options are always good. Some people might want to travel by high-speed rail. Some people might want a more affordable night train option. We should just have all of the options and let people choose and develop better options in all ways. For example, some trips are, 3-4 hours is a pretty friendly high-speed rail distance. But if it's going to be like 8 hours, it might as well just be a night train. And I think that how exciting would it be if some really long journeys could start to be train trips, and not just in Europe, but in like Canada. Imagine, so this shouldn't be the case, but Toronto to New York is already like a 12-hour train trip, and it's just like a daytime train. That should just be probably like a night train trip. Like leave Toronto at like 5 and arrive in New York at 5 a.m. Something like that. That would be great. I mean, or maybe a little later so that you arrive in New York a little later. But yeah. I'm sorry if I haven't been gentle enough. I know I can be critical, but it's always meant to be constructive. I appreciate that. And I know most people don't intend to be rude or anything. It's just always remember that for any YouTuber or person who has like a following on the internet, if you're saying something, it has probably been said. And so it's when you get like 100 comments, it just, even if it's gentle, like a poke might not hurt much, but a poke 100 times starts to be a bit sore, So that's all I'm saying. Great job on the New York City subway video. Thank you so much. Oh, and good job in the other one. What is the best S-Bahn system in Germany? Stay tuned for a video on that. Yeah. I thought North American freight companies were banking off hydrogen. There are a lot of different companies. Some are looking at hydrogen, some are looking at other technologies. just tuned in, have you mentioned your thoughts on the new Translink plan? I kind of did. I think they're good. Like, let's build more rapid transit. I like the idea of a line that connects Brentwood, Metrotown Brentwood, and downtown Vancouver, relieve the Expo line. So that would be good. And it could also be kind of turned into a loop, looping back to UBC eventually. I like the idea of connecting up to the North Shore. I'm literally looking at my Translink map I have on the wall, which is gigantic. I'll take a picture of it at some point and post it on Instagram or something. But yeah, no, it's really good. A lot of trams do have doors only on one side, but smart cities, and I'll admit, I may have made a video on trams recently, and I didn't really bring this up, but one really cool thing that can be done for buses and trams, and that you will see if you look around, and I can't believe I haven't mentioned this in a video, so I will definitely have to, is if you have a vehicle with doors on one side, like in a city like Toronto, and this is why my channel, this is one of the things I hope to change in the transit and infrastructure space. Often transit agencies will say something is just impossible, and what that might mean is the people tasked with finding out if something is possible make a judgment call that it isn't possible because they haven't heard of it being done before. One of these things could be using island platforms with buses or trams that have doors on one side, like basically all buses and a decent number of trams. A lot less, but some number of trams. There are a couple solutions. First of all, obviously you can have vehicles with doors on both sides. Not ideal though, especially for buses, because you probably have an asymmetrical number of doors, which just feels wrong to me as a bit of an OCD person. But there's a better solution, which is you can literally have crossovers on either side of your station. So for like, trams or buses, which are already line of sight operation, what you literally have is you couldn't just have an island platform here because the doors would be on the outside. So what you do is you cross over, so the doors are on the inside, and then you uncross as you pass the station. So that's actually something that exists on BRT systems and on tram systems. Do you play any train-related video games? Not really, to be honest. I've been playing some Halo lately, though. And also, people can add me. So I think I posted my info before, but yeah, add me on Halo. Let's play some. Super chat from Adam. Thoughts on, thank you for the super chat, as I should have said. Thoughts on Muni in San Francisco? I'm new to the city and it seems like a mess. Caltrain is great. No, it's certainly, I would say, is a mess. You know, the buses are actually not horrible, and you know, they have their trolley buses and stuff, and there's been some good initiatives like the Market Street, it's kind of a transit priority project. I forget the exact state of it at the moment, but the Muni metro system is rough, and I think it was rough in its design. I think it's one of those cases where, again, like I suggested with Buffalo, it might make more sense legitimately to just turn Muni into a metro plus some trams. The various above ground lines, reroute them and get them into the center of the city without using the tunnel, and then use the tunnel to just create like a metro with, you know, and if it's automated, it could have really high capacity. Automated meaning just higher frequencies would be easily possible. I think that's the approach that would make sense, and allowing low floor vehicles to travel on the rest of the network, because I just cannot stand trams that have raising and lowering stairs and having those tiny platforms that wheelchair users have to go up to board a high floor tram. All of these things are not good. So yeah, it is rough, and it's just the sort of thing that I feel like if this was Europe or Asia, they would have figured out a solution. They would have converted the tunnel to be a subway and done low floor trams, or they would have done something else. So yeah, it's frustrating. OBB does run all the sleepers, indeed. I just scrolling down here. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Melbourne used to have a cross-platform tram interchange at Domain, but it got demolished. That's unfortunate. Thanks for the answer. Of course. What do you think about Calgary's transit infrastructure? It's generally fine. The C train would be lovely with the central tunnel, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. So yeah, I think Calgary has a pretty solid rail network in particular. It has some BRT stuff, but there's no service. And I think that's a common problem with BRT systems, is building the infrastructure and not building or not operating the service. So yeah, frustrating. You wouldn't see my comments, so I super chatted. You should do a video on. So first of all, Idirixum Luke, thanks for the super chat. Via's remote lines, such as the Hudson Bay from Winnipeg to Churchill. That's an interesting video potentially to do for sure, and I have talked about remote communities and transit access before, so probably in the future I will do something like that. Oh my goodness, okay. I am moving slowly. I will try to move quickly. There is a lot of messages here. Oh my goodness. Okay. Public transport system in Bucharest, I don't have strong opinions about it. What is an example of a walkable neighborhood? Check out my favorite neighborhood in the world video from maybe like 2 years ago. It's about a neighborhood in Tokyo that I think is super walkable. Any plans to travel to New Zealand at some point? Lots of interesting things and some dumb things starting to happen in our transit space. Yeah, at some point for sure. I'd love to. I've only spent a little bit of time in Auckland. I haven't been to Wellington, so I would love to visit New Zealand. Yeah, no, it's also though it's everything is aligned with hopefully transit projects in the future. So if City Rail Link people are like, hey Reece, if you come down here, we'll let you go check out a TBM, then I would say, hey, okay, I might be flying down to New Zealand pretty soon. So things like that are pretty influential on me. Have you covered Vienna? Stay tuned, is what I'll say. Many cities in China had no subway before the 2010s and built a large network. Indeed. What do you think about constructing stop bonds? Is it good because it's more grade separated, or is it bad because... Oh. So I think the idea that any kind of tunneled transit is bad because it keeps streets free of transit is silly. You can have good streets and transit underground. Many cities do. Indeed, Miami does have elevated rail, and it's pretty nice. Ever made a mistake that got past editing and had viewers and yourself notice? Many times. I have made almost 600 videos at this point, so it's happened quite a few times. It's just it's the nature of doing YouTube. I've talked about the Translink 2050 plans a bit in this stream already, so I probably suggest going back earlier and watching that. Favorite Sydney trains line? Well, we're asking all the questions. I guess the Western line is really interesting, right? Because it travels through, the kind of most infrastructure dense part of the city. So probably the Western line. What are cable cars good at? I'm not sure which type you're referring to. Hello from Denmark. Hello to you. Everyone's saying I'm slow. That's so sad. I really like the worldwide scope of this channel, and I appreciate the help of users worldwide contributing their material. I really appreciate it too. And I think this, people sometimes comment that I'm like a North American focused channel. And I mean, I'm a bit, yeah, because I am in North America, and I do think that we're one of the places that can learn a lot. But I'm pretty global. I mean, I think of my last month of videos, I've made at least 10 about places that aren't in North America. So in your New York subway video, you said the 7 was your favorite line. Why is that? Long trains, cool infrastructure, a lot of it elevated through Queens. I love the crosstown through Manhattan. I love CBTC, and so the fact that it's enabled with CBTC, I love as well. Express track, even though triple track kind of sucks, is cool. So all of those reasons, and also it's just kind of unique. It's the only, it's 7. It's not 7, 8, 9. So it's cool. I'm just scrolling. Looks like you still have daylight. Yeah, but you can, as you can see, literally here, the sun is setting at the moment. I like the subway system posters on the wall. Thank you. The JFK air train does have a ton of stations, but it's more like an airport people mover than like the multiple heavy rail stations at Heathrow. So if you want rail back on Vancouver Island, gotta start advocating. Tel Aviv Airport Station is also surprisingly good. Absolutely. Are high-speed night trains a good idea? Sure, why not? I think especially for super long distance routes, that could be an interesting option as opposed to flights. What do you think about certain countries upgrading low-speed lines to higher speed versus building out a proper high-speed network? I think it's all about what's practical. If you're a small country, you might not need 320 kilometer per hour operations, right? If you can get between the big cities in like 3 hours, I think you're good. And that gives you 600-ish kilometers of room with 200 kilometer per hour lines. Just scrolling through here. Do you have any advice on how to convert people in an overly car-dependent region to being more open to transit, specifically rail? So saving money this is a big one. I know that it's like, oh, money, but seriously, the amount of money you can save by just taking transit and just rail, because, you know, I hate to say it, but in North America, especially in the US, buses can be incredibly unreliable, which is probably part of why they have a bad reputation that they don't necessarily have everywhere. So I think that, you know, if you live near a rail station, as I have in the past and as I do now, you don't even need to really rely on buses. You can walk for the rest of your trips, and you get frequent rail service. You save a ton of money on gas, insurance, and you also save energy. It's safer than driving a car. It gives you built-in exercise when you're walking to and from the station. You get to actually be around other people, which is nice. I mean, I'm not into fashion or whatever, or just like that kind of world, but if you were, then it would be great, because you get to see what people are looking like, and you get a sense of what society is like, and you get to look at the subway ads and see what products are being pushed by different companies these days, and all of these different things. And I think that, like, that's all really cool. And also just being able to relax on your commute is nice. So all of these things I think are great. And, you know, I think the Japanese model of looking at rail and transit as being a convenience is a really good one. So yeah, hopefully some of those things are valuable. Hello from Paris, France, but actually bonjour. I've been studying my French a lot. You know what that means. What are your opinions on loading gauge? I have a video planned on it, but let me remind myself. I should probably do that sooner than later. Let me just put a note here. I do have my videos planned pretty far in advance, and I'm working really hard to do that. I think if you're a Patreon supporter, which you should consider being, if you're not, you'll notice that I've been a lot more consistent about uploading early releases this year, and I hope to continue to be that way, because I'm doing videos in advance. What should be done with small American cities that only have bus networks and little to medium densities? Ramp up that bus service and enhance it, I would say. Thoughts on the proposal for reusing the Island Line in Victoria? I think it's a good idea for an O-train style operation. Any chance of doing a video about the Tyne-and-Wear Metro? Definitely eventually. Any upcoming Metro and Subway Explained? You should check out today's video, maybe? Yeah, I released a big one on New York today. Amsterdam's new Urbos trams are actually all bi-directional, which I find very interesting, but as we've learned with recent roadwork projects, it's pretty smart. Yeah, I think it's good. What's the best Halo game? I'm going to be honest, I never had really video game consoles as a kid. I didn't really play most of the Halo games, or games that much. So yeah, I don't have a strong opinion, but Halo Infinite is pretty fun. So yeah, it's a good way to relax for 10 minutes between working on videos. Oh, San Francisco cable cars. I mean, I think that they're fine, but they're like more of a heritage thing. I don't think that it's a super practical mode of transit. Well, I guess if you're climbing hills, potentially it can be useful. I think it's a niche technology broadly, but it's cool. Longest reasonable length for a tram before it becomes unwieldy. Oh, unwieldy. I have brain fog. I mean, it depends, because now that we have systems like, well, U6 in Vienna and we have the O train in Ottawa, long term it'll make sense to have like 100-meter long trams on those systems that are just single units, right? So on street, I think Budapest suggests it might be like 60 meters. I have seen Stockholm's new metro trains, but I forget what the seating configuration is. Are we worried about seeing similar problems with the Eglinton LRT in the East End? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Similar problems to what? Let me scroll up here. I've been moving quickly though, so I'm happy about that. Might be low priority, but I'm curious to see a video on Indonesia's HSR plans. Definitely will happen at some point. I mean, to be fair, if Muni wanted to, they could probably fix the subway section to be low floor, but it wouldn't be easy. What do you think of Winnipeg's BRT? Kind of, I think a city of its size could use a rail system. Calgary Transit Max is indeed in service and in poor service. What do you think about most Texan transit systems? I don't think about them too much because they aren't that fantastic. But I think DART is definitely the best one. Yeah. Cairo is building, I think like Texas cities should have built subways and regional rail. I know DART is kind of like regional rail, like some light rail systems, but it should just be proper regional rail. I think that like TexRail is such a good model. Just everything that DART has should basically be like a TexRail type thing, I think, with a center city tunnel. I think that'd be awesome. Thoughts on Cairo building 2 monorail lines? Oh, no, that's very concerning. I'm moving to Seoul on Tuesday and wondering if you're planning to make more videos about their transit. There's a video about Seoul coming up this next week because I am making all those international videos. But actually, yes, there will be an explained video on Seoul later this year. That is happening. That's on my list of cities I will definitely be doing this year. And yeah, Seoul's awesome. Go ride around on like Line 2 and stuff. It's really fun. And all the other lines, it's just an awesome city. And also, hey, if you're going to Seoul, send me an email because I could use some help with some footage and stuff to help make that Seoul video really good. What are your thoughts on the Line 5 extension starting before the main line is being completed? That's actually great, isn't it? I think it's really exciting. What do you think of express regional rail services in New York and on Caltrain? I don't think it's a good thing. I think that it's not the biggest struggle, though. I think for New York, through running regional rail is like the biggest problem and thing that needs to be addressed. Why are airport people movers generally disliked in transit circles? Are they considered gadget bonds? Well, yes, generally they are gadget bonds, but I think why they're disliked is it's less the people movers. What people really don't like is when you have to take a people mover to some other rail station to then get on a rail system to get downtown. It'd be great if you could just get on a train right at the terminal and get downtown, like at Amsterdam's airport, for example, or Zurich's. What is the fastest way of building a metro tunnel, regardless of cost, means, or NIMBYs? Like if we had an unlimited budget, how fast would, I would say probably cut and cover. Also, worth pointing out, I'm going to be doing a video on this topic as well. Thanks to Undefined Process for the super chat. Been using the same reasoning for years, so anything more would be great. I mean, that's from a personal reason. Those are the reasons to use transit. It's better for the environment as well, I suppose. And then from like a city level, obviously it's fantastic for the economy and the like. And if you design your transit well, it can be way faster than driving. I mean, I think that if that doesn't compel people and people don't see that as a good reason, then I think there's either something really pushing them away from transit or your transit isn't attractive enough. So I think that's what I would say. I absolutely agree. Moving transit underground is not bad because you can return that space back to people, and it doesn't have to be road space because you don't need to transport people on the road. You can transport them underground. Surrey LRT or SkyTrain. The Minneapolis Green Line light rail gets stuck at red lights while cars pass in front. Very frustrating. I can understand. China as an example of construction efficiency, but it's incurred huge amounts of debt, which is not necessarily sustainable or sustainably serviceable. Do you plan to discuss this in the future? I think taking on debt for infrastructure is some of the best debt you could potentially take on. That's my thinking. Infrastructure really pays back in dividends, especially smartly planned infrastructure. So that's my thinking. Cider Island platforms, what do you prefer? I feel like this is also a video I'm planning on making, so stay tuned for that. Hi Reece, regarding the Budapest tram system, as someone who's lived there for 22 years, I think you've oversold it. It's good on paper, but actually using it is terrible. Again, it's all relative. I think that everyone thinks their own transit system is worse than it really is. Do I think Budapest could probably benefit from a larger metro network? For sure, but is the tram network quite good? I think so. Though I do actually think that maybe there is a case for a bit more overnight service. New York was better when it was New Amsterdam, in my opinion. Interesting. Does UBC SkyTrain thoughts? Not sure. You're saying, do I support it? Of course. I love today's video. I'm a native New Yorker, and it was good. Wow, the super chats are flying off today. Oh my goodness. Everything is cool. Thanks for the super chat. What do you think of a Bathurst line in Toronto? Do you mean like a subway line? I think that actually may not be the worst idea, though. If we're doing a Jane line, then it's probably not necessary because the Spadina subway already has a lot of extra capacity, and so I don't know that it's necessary from a capacity point of view. From a coverage point of view, it seems good, but you have to remember that we already have a subway on Spadina, right? So that's my thinking. Farther west probably makes sense. Greetings from Chile. Hey. What are your thoughts on the Eglinton Crosstown? Talked about it so much, so I'm just going to leave it to my previous videos. My gamer tag. If you want my gamer tag, send me a message on Twitter. It's actually more expensive to take transit instead of taking the car. That is almost never true. There are so few cases where that's the case. It is incredible, especially if you're living in a city. Yeah, reading ads, do you say reading ads are a benefit? I like reading subway ads the same way I like seeing trailers at the movies. I don't think that, I'm not going to ride the subway to read the ads, but I think it's like one of those things that's actually kind of nice. And yeah, because let's be honest, ads are they're a form of media, right? So yeah, I mean, some of them are actually pretty good, to be honest. I mean, there's I hate to be this person, but there's like a series of subway ads in Toronto that are like puns they're like puzzles that you're supposed to do, and they're actually like really kind of fun. So yeah, I think so. Saving money in Germany by using transit is not possible. I disagree with that. Deutsche Bahn may have high ticket prices, but I still disagree that you cannot save money by using transit. What do you think of Winnipeg's BRT? Already answered this, so yeah, please avoid sending questions twice. Wow, okay, there's a lot of messages here. I'm gonna try to fly through these. Should do a video about the Long Island Railroad. I'll do one about the kind of like regional rail. Do you have a favorite metro system map design? Ooh, that's a good question. I really do like London a lot. But I also really like Vancouver's. So yeah. Yeah, Halo Infinite is definitely great. I knew about New York Metro Video, but I always want more. There is going to be, this year there will be at least one per month. There may be a few more spread out through the year, but they just take so long. They take a month at least to make. So, yeah. Munich may have on-street trams that are 72 meters long, but I don't think that's the point being made. The point is like single units, I think. And there are other cities in North America with longer trams than that, and probably in Europe as well. How to make Seattle streetcars more efficient? Dedicated lanes all the way. If the New York City subway worked on improving infrastructure, etc., does it have any chance of rivaling Tokyo? Not really. Tokyo's system is just gigantic. It feels like it's at least 2 or 3 times larger than the New York City subway. What do you think of regional transport in France? I'll probably do a feature video on that, so stay tuned. What's your opinion on Brightline's constant issues with people running the barriers? I think it's a real issue. You need better barriers, as seen in places like Europe. Hello from Sydney, from a fellow former Torontonian. Australia's opening up their borders soon for tourism. It would be cool to do a meet and greet. I agree, but it is incredibly expensive to fly to Australia, so that's the main difficulty. Also, to be honest, travel takes a lot of time and effort, which makes it a little hard for me to do YouTube, which becomes a bit of a problem as well, also for kind of cost reasons. Where did you get that Montreal Metro map? As mentioned earlier in the stream, that's just from the STM's official store. What's your opinion on Bright? Okay, I've already answered that. Again, please try to avoid repeating comments. What are you doing when you're doing Explained on Moscow? I actually didn't have one planned, but that's surprising, so I should definitely add that. Yeah, I'll do one this year probably on Moscow. Configuration alternating between longitudinal and transverse. I think that's fine, but obviously all longitudinal is better for capacity. Thoughts on generally 3 different types of doors on transit vehicles: plug style, outside sliding doors, and doors that move into pockets. I think outside sliding doors would probably be my favorite. Why? They have... Okay, so the reason I like that style of doors, they have the benefit of the sturdiness of pocket doors, but they have the ability to have more doors that plug-style doors would have, because doors can overlap with windows. Any good intercity transit options for southwestern Ontario short of HSR? Not really. What do you think of the Flexity Swift LRVs used in the Twin Cities? Same ones used in Melbourne and the only ones in North America. They're not that similar to the Melbourne ones. I don't think. Let me look. I've definitely looked at them before. I know they have like the design looks cool. They aren't though. They aren't the same as the Melbourne ones. They're just the same like Flexity Swift, but they don't look very similar. But I like the look. I think they look good. They're kind of the same layout as these Siemens S700s, which is a good layout. So yeah. What systems do you think Halifax should have? I think the BRT plans are actually pretty good. I think more ferries would be good as well. LA Purple Line extension I think is good. Karlsruhe has moved their line underground in the city recently. I made a video about it. Thanks for the video on New York. Didn't realize the difference between the number and letter lines was the width of the trains. Indeed. What about on-demand buses? It's a niche solution, but in a world where transit is much more important, it might not be as niche. What cities and systems have exceptional ADA accessibility? Well, let's not call it ADA accessibility, since that's like an American thing, so that kind of implies that you're just talking about America. I would say like Hong Kong, Singapore would be great examples because their systems are so new, right? So Vancouver's good too. It's fully accessible, but I think Hong Kong and Singapore have more redundant elevators, which is kind of a step up. Yep, ad revenue can be important to a transit system to help reduce cost to riders. Yeah, that is an important thing to mention, is that, yeah, like if you already own the car, to be fair, even if you already own the car, transit can be cheaper for a lot of people because, like, you can get a reduced rate on insurance if you're not driving it much, and you don't have to pay for gas, and you might not have to pay for parking very much. So that can save you a lot of money, especially in a major city. But yeah, like you shouldn't be comparing like already having the car, because yeah, if you have a car, then you're just paying to have the car and not utilize it as much as possible. That's not very efficient. What's better, narrow gauge or standard gauge? Standard. I would generally say. Have you ever looked at the transit system in Pittsburgh? Yes, I have. What are your feelings on CalMod and the progress that has been made? It's slow but exciting. Have a nice day. Must go to the store to stock up before the snowstorm closes everything here in SC. SC, South Carolina? Southern California? I'm not sure what SC is. Isn't Amtrak trying to make a route from Detroit to Toronto? Yeah, but it's probably going to be kind of slow. So I think that these are problems that need to be solved. Yes, I know about the D2 subway. Okay, you're talking about original DART plans for a subway. That's interesting. 72-meter long single unit trams that have been introduced by Siemens. Huh? Well, now that you've got me very interested, let's take a look. Fuel coals. So I'm looking, but these trams do not look like they don't look like they're incredibly long, and I'm looking at their three. Yeah, like no, these don't look super long. I'm looking at the Munich ones. Adam is saying, can you talk about, thank you for the super chat, can you talk about the Salesforce Transit Center drama? High versus low platforms and so on. Yes, so I think the Salesforce Transit Center is very nice, but I do think it is a little crazy that it was like, okay, forward thinking, sure, that you built the rail tunnels, like rail platforms in so it can have rail in the future, but also kind of sad that, first of all, stub and terminal, not great, so that issue needs to be solved. And in terms of high and low platforms, California needs to decide, the Bay Area needs to decide, but also I guess California with high-speed rail, does it want high or low platforms, and then just do that. I think this forcing Caltrain to have different heights and stuff, it's very silly. Yeah, I think that high platform makes more sense, but of course it's more expensive, so it's probably why it wasn't done on all of the Caltrain stations. But yeah, I think in the long term, that's what subways have. It's best for high capacity. So yeah, high floor would be ideal. Any plans for an Explained on Philadelphia? Yeah, I definitely will do one in the future on it. Any plans to do more videos on South American transit? Yes, indeed, I do. Stay tuned. Going to be a big Explained that's being planned right now. Flexity is just a term for a lot of different things, indeed. Yeah, the snowplow looks kind of cool, to be honest. On those Bombardier trams. What do you think about Portland, Oregon? Cool city, but really needs that center city tunnel. Will you ever do a video on fare-free transit? I have done one. I don't think it's a great idea, to be honest. I think it's fine for some people to pay no fare, but I think generally, I think the idea of fare-free transit, it's just kind of unnecessary. There's been a lot of studies and trials and and I don't think I would say it's conclusively been successful. So I think that it's kind of feels trendy. But the issue is fundamentally that a lot of people don't care about free fares. People who do care probably should just have a free fare, but a lot of riders do not, and so they should just continue to pay their fares because that's a ton of money that needs to be replaced somewhere. And I think if you're going to have, again, studies have shown that people would rather just have millions and millions of dollars for more service than they would free fares. So, yeah, that's what I'll say. There was a dog barking, so that's a thing. For future reference, when I say SC, I mean South Carolina. I appreciate that, but it's very hard to remember where people are from. So, yeah. What is your general take on enhancing pedestrian infrastructure versus public transit? You got to do both. I don't think you should only do one or can only do one. Would you make a video talking about the S-Bahn concept more in depth? I see the term being used a lot, but I think it varies so much between cities. Yeah, probably. Okay. About the Munich trams. My city canceled a tram system extension and wants to build a BRT instead. I don't necessarily think that's bad. Sometimes BRT might be better. Yes. There can be 4 types of S-Bahn. Okay, I'm just going to continue. Will you make more videos on LA in the future? Absolutely, yes. What neighborhood do you live in, and how long does it take to walk from one end to the other end? I'm not going to say what neighborhood I live in, and I don't think the borders are super clear. So, yes. So, oh my goodness, I'm at the bottom of the chat. Let me stretch. Oh, that was quite the struggle. But yeah, I've been streaming for a really long time now, so I'm probably going to ramp things down. Yeah, I'll maybe take a few more questions, and then that'll be it for today. Yeah. I'm looking at this Munich tram article on Wikipedia. What do you think about the subte in Buenos Aires? It's really cool, and also definitely going to get a video. No one has ever said I looked like Jack Black to me, and I don't know whether that is a compliment. Thanks for a great chat to everyone. Someone says, I did not hear that California High-Speed Rail had received new funding. Yes, it is a little silly that it doesn't seem like we have much rail-based maintenance equipment for the streetcar network. I don't think Manchester necessarily needs an underground HS2 station. I think that there is an issue in the UK and in Canada and in the United States with putting way too much stuff underground, and I think we should try to avoid doing that as much as we do. What do you think about Atlanta? I've spent some time in Atlanta. It's a decent city, but needs way better transit. There's a lot of highways. What countries have you been to already? A lot. I don't think I've really talked about transit in a country I haven't visited. Yeah, I would say. Just watched your New York City transit video. Would you ever consider making a video on Connecticut rail history? Besides our connections to New York, we have a ton of interesting history. I don't do a ton of history stuff, but it is possible in the future I would talk about some more Connecticut rail stuff. I do have some of the earliest videos on my channel are videos from New Haven. Thanks for the stream. You might move slow, but I like that you're trying to get to each question. Thank you. So I think I'm going to call that it for the night. I'm kind of tired, and also I'm working on a video. So I'm going to go write that. Yes, I have been to China. I'm going to go write that video, and yeah, thanks everyone for coming out and chatting with me, and I will see you in the next stream. Thank you.